Are you struggling with imposter syndrome? Do you have a habit of engaging in self-sabotaging behaviors that are either conscious or unconscious? Do you have an inner critic whose negative thoughts bring you to a place of feeling stuck? If any of this sounds familiar, take heart. Today's expert, Linda Binns, will guide us on a wonderful journey into breaking free of the destructive habits that hold you back and creating new habits that bring you into a place of discovering your authentic self and living your best, most authentic life. Today, we'll focus on this listener's real-life question. Can you offer some pointers for getting out of self-defeating habits? I can be my own worst enemy. I procrastinate about everything, from handling relationship chaos to getting my work projects done on time. I end up in a vicious cycle where I don't do the things I should. Then I feel bad about myself, and it spirals until I feel broken and powerless. Do you have any tips? And with that question as the focus of today's episode, I'm Dr. Carla Marie Manley, and this is Imperfect Love. Please note, as this episode contains sensitive information, listener discretion is advised. If you need support, please see the links in the show notes.
Welcome to Imperfect Love with Dr. Carla Marie Manley, psychologist, author, and relationship expert. I'm here to help unravel mysteries and misconceptions about love, relationships, and mental health issues, plus everything in between. Love is complicated, people are imperfect, and relationships surely can be tough. Together, we'll navigate this messy, imperfect space of real life.
Today, I am joined by a fabulous expert, Linda Binns. She will help us understand how to turn survival energy into energy that helps you truly thrive. Welcome to the podcast, Linda. It's such a joy to have you with us today.
Thank you so much, Carla. It is my pleasure to be here. I'm really happy to be doing this today.
Well, you are such a wonderful expert, well aligned with the topic of today. You're an author, you're a coach who really helps people learn to discover their unique code for, changing these old patterns that can keep us stuck, breaking these habits that perpetuate low self-worth, self-sabotage, all of those things that work against us and are often operating underneath our own radar. So before we launch into all of your wealth of expertise, can you tell our listeners just a little bit about what makes you you?
Yes, well, I functioned in survival mode for a long, long time. And like many people just didn't know it. I think what makes me me is that I'm constantly striving to improve myself. I think once I recognized that was even possible, then I just wholeheartedly embraced it. And as somebody said to me, when I'm trying to resolve an issue, I leave no stone unturned. I won't stop. I guess you could call it stubborn, but I love figuring out what works for me with each of my clients. I love figuring out what works for them because there is no one size fits all. It's really about figuring out who someone is and then what works for them and what doesn't. That's what I love to do. It's like helping people understand themselves at deeper and deeper levels because we typically don't understand ourselves. So I think that's what makes me me.
Thank you so much. And it's really interesting listening to you talk because it's very much the way I operate. And often we think in life that we achieve this moment of self-fulfillment, or that our lives are perfect, or we've become perfect, or maybe we believe we can never achieve self-growth, or we don't even have self-growth on our radar. Yet, for people who learn to value self development, we can call it self development, self exploration, self growth, it becomes like a way of being as important as eating right, exercising, sleeping right. Then we add in that component for people who really value this. It becomes a daily piece of who we are, that self-reflection, seeing a psychotherapist when we feel the need to or want to, reading self-help books, doing that work, not because we're broken, but because we want to evolve over time and learn more about what makes us tick on a psychological level. So thank you. We are very aligned.
I mean, it is. We so often we just go through life thinking this is just the way things have to be, and that's how I used to be. You know, the way I was brought up, the way the beliefs that were kind of programmed in me as a child, that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't worthy of anything, that I wouldn't amount to anything, all of those things, and I completely believed those. But then over time, as I started to, there started to be little glimmers of question, like, is that really true? And my other experiences once I left home started to show me that perhaps that wasn't true. And so I started to really question those beliefs and that conditioning that I had. And once I saw and experienced what happened as a result of that, how much better life gets when you really start to dig into those things. I know there's often a lot of fear about digging into those things, but you start to progress, and then there's no way you would ever go back. I look back at who I used to be, and I cannot imagine how I even did survive, as that person that I was. And you just, once you are on this journey, it is a journey. There's no going back. You wouldn't want to go back. Life just gets better and better and better. The more you know yourself, the more you understand yourself, and the more you learn to embrace who you really are, not who other people tell you you are.
Absolutely. And, I really want to validate what you said because it comes from that personal experience as well as experience with clients of watching people break free from old conditioning. Some people grew up in very healthy, expansive childhood environments. Many people don't. And so that journey into self-awareness, self-expansiveness, independence, individuation, it can all be very, very scary because you're coloring outside the lines. You're coloring, outside what was prescribed to you as being the correct way or the only way. And so that journey, as you're saying, can be so empowering and, of course, anxiety inducing at first. But when you look in the rearview mirror and look at how far you've come, and I look at my own life that way, but I help many clients, they'll come back and they'll say, I can't believe who I was. I would trade my old life for what I have now. I would never trade. I wouldn't want that old life back ever. I can't believe what I put up with from other people. I can't believe the way I talked to myself. I can't believe the way I treated other people. All of those things, that it's not about shaming or blaming the younger version of oneself, but having loads of empathy and appreciation for the journey that's happened, not by chance, but because of self-work.
Yes, exactly. So often people become extremely frustrated with themselves because they're procrastinating, because they're not achieving what they want, because they don't feel as happy as they think they should be, even though they may seem to have everything we all believe we should want, nice house, nice cars, nice family, plenty of money maybe, and yet there's an emptiness inside, and it can be incredibly frustrating, and you can't help but believe, well, there must be something wrong with me if, why am I not happy in this situation? Why do I feel that I'm struggling? But once you start to really learn to understand yourself, explore what I like to say, explore your energy. Who are you energetically? what beliefs and conditioning do you have? What kind of things affect you? Do other people's energy? Does that affect you? Do you tend to take on other people's emotions and trauma? Do you struggle in certain environments? Do people tend to tell you you're too much, or you're too sensitive, you take things too personally, whenever you have those kinds of experiences, it makes you question who you really are. And it sounds so simple, and I think it is simple. Somebody said to me once, sort of the answer is know who you are and then be that. I thought, oh, okay, know who you are and be that. But we don't know who we are. I always thought because of what I was told, that I wasn't smart, that I wasn't capable of anything really, that I was always supposed to be small. And that's my family experience was about keeping me small. And it wasn't until I started to leave that environment that I started to expand and recognize that actually, no, that's not the case. That's really not true. And if you're procrastinating, people come to me and they'll say, I need help with time management. I'm not managing my time. I'm procrastinating about everything. And then very often, once we dig into that a little bit, we find out that what they're doing is not really in alignment with who they are at all. And that's why they're procrastinating, is because it's not what they want to be doing. They just didn't recognize that. They thought that they should just be good at this. They should just get better at this. So it's not that there's something wrong with you. It's, are you living in alignment with who you are? And if you're struggling, if you don't wake up in the morning feeling good about yourself and feeling good about what you're going to be doing throughout the day, then there's something, you are in survival mode, right? There's something about your life that you need to look at, because I truly believe now, and I used to really struggle with the word joy. When people would say, oh, you feel the joy or whatever. And I think that seems so far away for me. But I honestly believe now that, we are here to enjoy our lives, to feel good about ourselves. And when we don't, then that's a sign that there's something for us to do, something for us to look at within ourselves. Not about changing the external circumstances, it's looking at ourselves, and then the external circumstances change.
Thank you. And so let's pause. There are so many things you've brought up that are important to pay attention to. And I'll start with joy, because joy, it makes sense that it didn't, resonate with you, because it sounds like you didn't grow up in a very joyful environment. Mm-hmm. And when I know in my first book, Joy from Fear, I really came to a place where I had to understand what joy was, wanted to understand it. And from a physical level, an experiential level, mental, spiritual, all of those places. And what I came to see within my own framework is that joy is something that we are born with. I liken it to a votive candle, and it's there burning. And when we're out in the world, it builds up soot. We build soot up on that glass because people say unkind things to us. We say unkind things to ourselves as a response to that. We engage in patterns that are meant to protect us, but they harm us and keep us stuck. All of these things build up soot. And so we can't see and feel our own joy because of all of this soot. And then when we learn to do self-work, simple noticing, whether it's meditation, journaling, seeing a therapist, whatever helps us notice our patterns and wipe away that soot bit by bit, all of those self-sabotaging behaviors, and maybe putting people who, as you were saying, we do this internal work, and then as a response, we may need to distance ourselves from people or situations that are unhealthy for us. But we all have that ability to work with our joy. Sometimes we won't feel it. Sometimes, we don't have to stay in, but it's always there. It's always accessible. And sometimes it can get overpowered by anger or sadness or, some of the other core emotions. But I love that you're bringing up joy, because I think If we slow down, we can generally tap into it. I know my morning exercise when I'm out in nature, it is such a joy-filled time because there are birds. And if I go super early, there are owls hooting and all sorts of things that are just, that's pure joy. And we can all access that. Even if we're not in proximity to nature, we can access that through visualizations and all sorts of small bits of mindfulness that allow us to touch our joy, feel our joy, remind us that it's there. So thank you for bringing up joy. The other piece, so I'd like, please, for you to set out some definitions for us. And the three that I'd like to start with, because they're core not only to the listener's question of the day, but core to your work. Please define self-sabotage, explain where it comes from, and then if you would also please talk about survival energy and thrive energy.
Okay. Well, self-sabotage, I think it comes, one of the best ways I've seen it described is it's like just like a thermostat. It's like as we grow up, we have this set point that says, based on our, where we grew up, our community, what we were led to believe about ourselves and all of that. It's like we have this set point that says, okay, this is how happy you can be. This is how successful you can be. This is how wealthy you can be. And as we start to bump up against that, so especially if you're on a path of personal growth and you're looking to improve your life situation and your life experiences, and you come up against that set point, there are parts of you, subconscious parts of you, that will then say, oh, wait a minute. You can't do that. You can't be, this is how successful you're supposed to be. You can't move beyond that. And it's designed to keep you safe. And I think it's, when we were children, these inner saboteurs, if you like, served a purpose to keep us safe. But now, if you're trying to grow beyond what you were led to believe you could achieve, then they will kick in and say, no, you can't do that. And you'll be pulled back. In many ways. So an example might be, I've had this several times with female clients particularly, where they have their own business and they're growing the business and they start to do well and things start to go well. And then things will happen. They will encounter patterns. And by patterns, I mean something that repeatedly happens where they will be pulled away. So it could be a family emergency, for example, where the family needs them so much so that they are pulled away from what they want to do with their business, with their life. Or they'll start to have accidents, or different things will happen, which causes them to stop and causes them to kind of go backwards a little bit. And then once that drama is over, or whatever it is, and they start again, and they reach up against that set point again, something else will happen. It may be a similar kind of thing. And I'm thinking of one client in particular who had, every time she started to do really well, there was a family drama, and she was pulled into that. It's not that you can't be there for your family to support them, but do you have to allow it to completely derail what you're focused on? You can be there, you can offer your support in whatever way you can, but do you want to allow it to completely derail what you're focused on? So I think we all have these saboteurs, and it could be as simple as the judge, for example. We all have the judge, and the judge is active in all of us quite often. You might judge someone because they're driving too fast. You might judge the person who's driving too close behind you. You might judge the person who left their shopping cart in the parking lot and didn't put it away. But those judgments and all of those things can get in our way. But I think they're designed to keep us safe. And the way I have learned to overcome them is to recognize them, to say, okay, recognize what that is. I'm reaching that set point, and now I'm choosing to go beyond it. So it's like, yes, I recognize this sabotage, or this experience is coming into my life in an attempt to keep me safe and pull me back. and I recognize I don't really need it, and I'm going to choose to move on anyway. That's kind of the approach that I take with self-sabotage. But it really, it's something many of us can identify with. But it seems like very often it seems like it's something that's happening outside of us. So if it's a family drama or if it's a car accident or something like that, and those things keep happening, you might think, well, how do I have control over that? It's something that is happening. But I promise you that once you start looking at, okay, why is this continuing to happen? And what is it telling me about myself? And you start to challenge that inner saboteur, then you can move beyond it. So that's how I
Beautiful
see
explanation.
Thank
Really
you.
beautiful, Linda. And I think that it's so important for, our listeners, let's slow down so that you can have time, listeners, to think of maybe parts in your life where you're doing really well, but maybe someone in your family or friend circle says, oh, well, that's not a good path for you. Or, oh, do you really want to take that risk? Or maybe there's a part of yourself that's saying, can you really be successful at that? Remember, Dad always said everything you touched would turn to, crap or whatever it is. And a lot of these things that even things coaches told us, teachers told us, oh, you're not the smartest one in the classroom, are you? Little quips, and our brains are designed to hold on to those little negative. We could have 1,000 compliments, but if somebody gives us one negative dig, it's the
Yeah.
negative dig that we remember. Not
Yes.
because we're broken, but because, again, Linda, going back to what you said, it's about survival. We learn to pay attention to the negative because then we're thinking, oh, I need to be safe. Just like the house can be perfectly quiet and wonderful, and we hear one creak. And we pay attention to the creak because something's in our system is saying, oh, you must pay attention to that creak to be safe. So if this resonates with you, listeners, remember, you're not broken. They're just old, hardwired patterns that at one point kept you in a so-called safe place because of your childhood or early adult years, but now might work against you. Linda, before we move to the thrive energy and the survive energy, I wanted just to pop into something that came up with procrastination or self-sabotage. I've found that sometimes when I'm working with clients on self-sabotage, and they'll say something like this, kind of like to procrastinate. I do my best work on, studying for an exam or baking cookies for the event the next day or turning out this big work product. I actually really like to procrastinate because I get this nice surge of energy when I do that. I personally see that as different from procrastination, where somebody doesn't have a positive outcome, where they end up giving their worst efforts, or they don't bake the cookies at all, or they don't show up for the event. What is your experience with that, and how do you see that type of pattern?
I completely agree with you. I wouldn't call that procrastination. I would call that being thoughtful or putting thoughtful energy into something as opposed to just jumping in and doing it. I don't see that as procrastination at all. What I always look at is, if you have a behavior, is it causing you problems? So is it the fact that you like to take that time before you do an exam, before you study, before you write something, before you perform a task? If you like to take that time and then you do the task and it works out better because you've taken that time, how is that a problem? That's not a problem. But like you said, if you're procrastinating and you keep thinking about it and you never actually get to do it, then that is procrastination. Then it's causing you a problem. So that's when you need to look at it.
Exactly. And I think it's so important for people to be, because we often call that last night's, that cram studying. And this really resonates with me because I happen to be that kind of person where I like to be busy and then, okay, I know this thing. Okay, I'm going to set aside this 3 hours before the event and that's when I'm going to get it done. And that's really good for my energy. It really works for me. And I think, and I know many, many clients where once they realize if it's working for you, it is in a healthy way, unless it's causing you stress. But if that's where you get your energy from and you get a good outcome, I agree that we can call it mindful,
Yes.
last minute scheduling because you're doing it knowing that this is where you do your best. So if it's not a problem, then you don't have to call it procrastination. If you like that word and you want to call it mindful procrastination, feel free. But that differentiation between patterns that keep you stuck and keep you from performing in the way that you'd like to perform, and patterns that you look at and you observe and you say, wow, this actually works for me. It doesn't harm anyone around me. I still lead. It feels good. So thank you, Linda, for that piece. That's really helpful. So let's move to the survive energy and how it works against us and how thrive energy, especially looking at this listener who's getting stuck in these traps and these cycles that make them not feel good about themselves. They feel, like they're not worth a lot. They feel like they're broken. Please help us sort through how we can change that energy from, in this case, it sounds very much in survival mode, just kind of going through the steps. So what are your...
Well, survival energy, just getting through the day, is really driven by fear, is driven by stress, maybe obligation, the need to prove yourself or please others. But thriving energy is just very different. It's expansive, it's creative. There's a calmness to it, and there's a connection to who you are, your purpose, and your authenticity. This is why I say self-awareness is, I think, the most important thing. And just like you were saying, that understanding of this is my energy and this is how it works best for me, so that when I'm doing this kind of work, I like to do it mindfully and take time before I start. Not everybody is the same. So this is why, when there are sort of time management things and strategies and all of these kind of strategies where people say this works for everybody. It doesn't. It's a case of understanding what works for you. So if you're operating from survival mode, you basically feel exhausted. You overthink. It might be people pleasing. You might be constantly feeling that there's something wrong. Maybe you're behind, or there's just no, like we said earlier, no joy in life. And it can show up in so many ways. You feel it in your body. You just don't feel good. I mean, if you want to put it simply, if you're in survival mode, you don't feel good. If you're in thriving mode, you feel great, right? You feel good about yourself. You feel good about what is happening in your life. So how do you shift from one to the other? Well, it always comes to awareness. It's about noticing what's going on with you, noticing your energy patterns, noticing what drains you, what replenishes you, and with that awareness comes the ability to change something that's not working for you. So if you get up every morning and you're in this, survival mode, it's just, I just got to get through the day. Maybe at some point you pause and you say, okay, what is it about my life? What is it about this day I'm going to enter into today that's making me feel this way? Or first identify, well, how am I feeling? I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling depressed. What is that? Where is that coming from? I love self-inquiry, asking ourselves these questions. And sometimes, of course, it's really difficult for some people to answer those questions themselves, which is why they need a therapist or why they need a coach to help them to uncover those things. But it's really about self-inquiry. You start to look at yourself and look at your life and see, what is it about myself, about my life, about what's going on, or about what just happened that's causing me to feel this way? With that awareness comes the ability to change it, because you start to recognize, okay, well, I'm not happy in my job. Okay, well, do I need to, or do I want to change professions? Do I want to move to a new company? Do I want to start my own business? What is it that would energize me? So it's that self-awareness. And once you're aware, once you become aware of what's not functioning well, what's not bringing you joy, not what's not energizing you about yourself, your life experiences at the moment, then what can change? What is something you can do right now that could change? And maybe, one small, what I like to say, one small loving step. What's one small loving step that you can take for yourself to begin the process of change?
Thank you so much for making it easy to understand and approach, because often, I know this from personal experience and vast clinical experience, I hear the same story again and again. Somebody says, I'm not happy in my relationship. I'm not happy at work. I don't have hobbies that feel good. I don't have a life that feels good, whatever that might be. I don't have friendships that feel supportive. And looking at all or one of those areas and seeing it as that proverbial onion that we unpeel slowly and steadily. Yeah. And I love, Linda, that you use the term self-inquiry, because when we turn to the self and ask the self in a very non-judgmental kind way, okay, I'm feeling sad. Why am I feeling sad? I'm feeling angry. Why am I feeling angry? I'm not feeling fulfilled at work. What about work is unfulfilling? I'm not, what? And just keep asking.
Just keep asking.
Yes, and you may not have the answers. I know years ago when I was in a very unfulfilling situation, it took a lot of self-inquiry, a lot of paying attention to my body. My body was speaking up first, right? My body, my neck ached, my head ached, my shoulders ached. And I realized, oh, my life is literally a pain in my neck. It is the way I am choosing to live that is making other people happy is a pain in my neck, quite literally. And so was the journey easy? No. Was it challenging? Yes. Was it at times scary? Yes. Would I ever go back to that old life? You could not. Truly, if you handed me $1 billion check and said, here's a check, go back to that life, I would say, no, thank you. Here, take your check, rip it up in tiny pieces. I have absolutely. And it was that journey that allowed me, and it sounds like you were on a very similar journey. It's that type of journey where deep. Yeah, it's a hard journey, but it is the most rewarding journey of life, because you break out of those survival patterns where every day is like you're paddling in shark-infested waters and just staying above. And it's really hard. And as you said, it's exhausting. So thank you for highlighting that and what survival energy. If you are constantly exhausted, listeners, if you're in these cycles where you're calling them vicious cycles or people pleasing or imposter syndrome or negative inner talk or constantly living with your saboteur or your judge, those chronic patterns, that is indicative of survival mode. So, Linda, as the expert in this, how can we shift out of that survival mode, which you've given us a really good sense of what it looks like, feels like, other than mindfully paying attention and self-inquiry? What steps might someone do, their loving baby steps, day by day, that can help them? And listeners, Linda and I agree on this one as well. It's baby steps. We want change overnight. We want life to be better overnight. But A, it's not possible. And B, it wouldn't be quite so rewarding if you didn't have to work for it. So, Linda, to you, please.
Well, some of the things, I like to focus on simple, practical things that you can do starting right now. So one thing might be how you start your morning, right? So when you wake up, if you just started by saying, An affirmation, for example, recognizing that you are good enough, you are enough just as you are, right? Because that was a big one for me. I wasn't good enough. And that's what many people feel. I'm not good enough. I don't deserve the best. Affirm to yourself what you want your outcomes in life to be. Start with, I know I'm good enough. I can accomplish anything I want. Whatever that is for you, start your morning in a positive way. I like to set an intention in the morning that I'm going to, you talked about joy, and it's not something that's out there, it's in here. So in the morning, I set an intention. I want to feel the joy that's inside me. Right. I want to feel the love. I want to feel the joy. That's what I want my day to be filled with. Isn't that a much better way to start the day than, just getting out of bed and thinking, all the things you have to do today. If you get in the habit of doing something like that, setting an intention for how you want your day to be, maybe saying an affirmation or two. Some people like to do what they call morning pages, where they'll just journal their thoughts and what they want the outcome for the day to be. That's a good start. Another way is in the evening, especially if you're an overthinker, if you tend to be anxious and worried about a lot of things in the evening before you go to bed. I think one of the most helpful things is just get it all out of your head and onto paper. Just get it all out. And people might say, well, I'm not very good at journaling. It doesn't have to be you don't have to have a special journal. You can just have an old notebook. This is not something you really need to keep and refer back to. It's just something to get it out of your head, out of your body, and onto paper. And sometimes when you do that, some clarity comes to you as you're doing it. The process of writing all that down and getting that out of your body. So those two things I think are really helpful. I think taking regular pauses throughout the day to just check in with yourself and ask yourself, just see how you're feeling. And this only takes a few seconds. What am I feeling? So you might have started off the day feeling really good. And now you pause and you say, wait a minute, I don't feel so good anymore. Then you can ask yourself, well, what happened? Was it the interaction with that person just then? Was it because somebody gave me this to do and this is not something I really want to do or like doing? But you start to become more aware of who you are. And the more aware you are of yourself and what it is that you want in your life, and you set intentions for being able to know that you can experience what you want in your life, then the more you start to see things happen start to shift in a more positive way. I mean, these are really simple things. I mean, and because they're so simple, people often dismiss them because they think, well, I'm looking for the answer. And once I find the answer, then my whole world's going to change. No, it is those baby steps. And, that's a great starting point, is to start setting your intention for what you want your day to be like, what you want your energy to be like, noticing what it's like throughout the day, and then doing some journaling at the end of the day. Your life will start to shift just by you doing those things. Obviously, there's a lot more you can do, but that's a great starting point. I think just pick one of those and start.
I think that's so beautiful and very clear steps. And listeners, I agree with Linda. It may sound simple, but I often say we can never unlearn something we've learned. And if we learn just through the power of a morning meditation, something like, I am wonderful, I am special, I am powerful. If we learn to do a loving kindness meditation, my favorite one is the very ancient one. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be safe from inner and outer danger. May I be well in body, mind, and spirit. May I be truly happy and free. When we say things like that to ourselves, we are building internal strength, internal positive beliefs. We are building resilience. And I like to think about it this way. If you have a little kiddo and you're telling the little kiddo, oh, you can't ride that bike. Oh, no, it's too big for you. You're going to fall. Uh-oh, that's not a good thing. Don't get on that bike. The outcome may be very, very different from if you're telling the child, you're strong. You can do this. I'm right here with you. No worries. If you do a little tumble, we'll get right up and keep on going. You can do this. If we know that those two word tracks are different for a kiddo, why would they be any different for us in adult life?
Yes.
The power of our speech, that inner critic, that inner voice, can really send us on a negative trajectory. But as you wisely said, Linda, these little steps, these little shifts, neurolinguistically, they're very, very powerful and can shift us from that mode of, as you call it, the survival energy, just getting the basics done and, plodding
Yeah.
through it, to that place of vibrant, we're not saying that it's going to be all roses, but it will be a much different, better life in time because you're following your true voice, your core, your needs. And a good example is I was just working with someone who said, I run every day. I run every day, and it's something I really pride myself on, but I've been sick. So I've not been running, and part of me feels really badly about that, like I'm letting myself down. And we worked on this, and she came to the conclusion that it was actually really wise not to be running when she's in the midst of this ferocious flu bug, because that is what her body needs. And it's simple acts like that where you listen to what your body's telling you, even if your mind's screaming, you should, you should, you should. If you're really tuning into what your body, mind, and spirit need, you'll go more often than not in the right direction. Do you agree, Linda?
Oh, most definitely. And speaking as someone, I used to be very hard on myself. And an example is I learned to play tennis when I was in my 30s, and I love playing tennis. And I joined some leagues, and I was playing competitively. And I used to, and you see this, I see it with every tennis player just about, and I remember one day I was playing a tennis match, and I was having some challenges with my knee. I wasn't sleeping very well at that time. And so I was playing this match, and I was getting frustrated with myself because, my timing was off. I wasn't quite getting to the ball in time. I wasn't hitting my shots as I know I can. I was getting so frustrated with myself. And then there was just this sort of like a light bulb moment, I suppose, where I had the thought, can you just acknowledge the fact that you are out here playing tennis at all? Your knee doesn't feel good. You didn't sleep well last night. Can you just be kind to yourself and acknowledge what you can do rather than what you're not able to do? And that was a real turning point for me because I just realized the way I talk to myself and how much better it is to be kind to yourself than it is to be frustrated with yourself. And this is what we do. We get frustrated with ourselves. Like you said, you wouldn't do that to a child. You would be more encouraging with a child or with a loved one. You would be more encouraging. And yet to ourselves, we take on this attitude that we're not doing enough. We've got to push. We've got to, being mean to yourself doesn't help you. Be kind to yourself. If you can take away anything from today, I would say that. Just be kinder to yourself. Be gentle.
Absolutely. And as you're changing patterns, it doesn't mean that you can't gently nudge yourself forward through the anxiety, through the fear, through the, pushback of procrastination patterns, through the, imposter syndrome that's telling you you're not good enough. You can use some gentle, kind force as you look at those old beliefs, those old patterns, and say, I choose today to go beyond this. I choose to take that one loving step beyond this. And by doing that, you can gently nudge yourself forward. And there will be times, Linda, as you're saying, where you gently nudge yourself back, where you say, it's okay for me not to do this project. I've been given 5 projects. I've prioritized them. This one is the lowest value. I give myself permission not to do that particular thing so that I can give my best to project 1, 2, 3, 4. And this probably resonates with anyone who has kids or a job or a life at all. Sometimes you just have to look at what's on your plate and maybe toss 1 or 2 of the things off that you thought were high value, but when you look at it through a lens of loving kindness, you realize, oh, to avoid a sense of overwhelm or survival mode, if I just nudge these off because they're really not that important, it's little acts of loving kindness and self-awareness. Because so often our to-do lists, I can speak to this from personal experience, right? Our to-do list contains some things that really aren't that important after all.
Yeah. Well, and we have these, I think it's important to also be aware of your expectations for yourself and for other people, because, sometimes we expect people to think the same way we do or behave the same way we do. They don't. So the more you have those expectations, the more often you're going to be disappointed, but also really become aware of the expectations you have for yourself, because I think most people begin to find as they do that their expectations for themselves are often things they would not expect for someone else that they loved, or are just so unrealistic they don't have a chance of succeeding. And so it's just another opportunity to beat yourself up because you've set your expectations for yourself too high. And I love what you said about giving yourself permission. I think very often we just don't realize sometimes that's all it takes, just giving yourself permission to do something, to not do something, to be kinder to yourself. We have that ability. Just give yourself permission to do what feels good for you and is right for you.
Absolutely. And as a final piece, you really led me to this, and I think it's so important to emphasize. If, as you may be doing, if you find yourself comparing your output or your life to someone else, your expectations of yourself are based on what a coworker accomplishes, or your partner accomplishes, or your friend or parent, let go of that comparison, because that is not what is right for you. You might want, and plus you don't know what's going on inside that person's internal world, but we all have different skills. I recall, I have sisters, some of them are phenomenal bakers and cooks and seamstresses and all of these things, and that's not my thing. And so sure, I look at them with admiration or for the skills, but to compare myself would not be helpful because I have my own skill set. And that's what we want to do if we find ourselves stuck in comparison, which could lead to imposter syndrome and self-sabotage. If you find yourself comparing what you do or who you are to other people, let go of that. If you can find a bit of motivation in something somebody else is doing, like, oh yeah, that sounds really good to me, that's different. But to compare who you are, it just worsens that whole inner critic and low self-worth. What would you think of that, Linda?
Oh, I completely agree. I think comparison, when we compare ourselves to other people, I think that's one of the biggest ways we sabotage ourselves, actually. Be yourself, learn who that is and what works for you, and do that. And yes, you can learn from other people. Yes, you can see something someone else is doing. And if that feels right for you to incorporate, fine. But I think we do it so much now, especially with social media and everything. I have people say to me, oh, but, other people my age, they're retiring, or they've got second homes, or they're going on all these vacations. And I say to them, is that what you want to do? And they say, well, no. Well, then that's not an issue, is it? You're making it something that, well, there must be something wrong with me because I'm not in the same position as these people and doing the same things as these people. But in reality, that's not you. That's not your life. So when you look at other people and think, well, I should be doing what they're doing, or they're more successful than me, or why are they more successful than me when I actually know more than them? That really sabotages you in a big way. So don't worry about what other people are doing. Let them do what they're doing. Learn from them if you want, if it's valuable for you, but learn who you are and then give yourself permission to be that rather than comparing yourself with everyone else.
Beautifully said. And I wholeheartedly agree. If we use our energy to learn who we are and let that beautiful, vibrant, unique being evolve in an empowered, kind, empathic, enlightened way, what better gift could we give to ourselves and ultimately to the world? Oh, Linda, thank you, thank you, thank you. Any other pieces that you'd like to highlight as we wrap up?
Well, the only other thing I think I'd like to say is that when things are not going well in our lives, we often tend to make it about the other person or the situation. Instead of focusing out there, turn around and go in here and focus on you, not the situation, not the person. Well, that person's being mean to me. They shouldn't be like that. That may be true, but what is it triggered in you? The fact that they did this to you, what is that triggering in you? Look at you, not the other person or the situation. And also to be aware, I think, if you truly want to thrive, take a look at and ask yourself what you're tolerating in your life, because we can tolerate a lot. But just because you can tolerate it doesn't mean to say it's the right thing for you. Sometimes we wait until everything's falling apart before we will actually make a change. You don't have to do that. Start now. Start right now. Just with the small steps we've talked about today.
Thank you. Thank you. I agree. Just we can tolerate so much, but that's not a way to live.
No.
Tolerating that survival mode, that's not a way to live. Do those little steps that bring the awareness, and that awareness brings energy, and that energy brings change. And with that change, you'll have a lovely, it's sometimes bumpy and imperfect, but you'll have a lovely journey ahead. So, Linda, where can our listeners find you?
Well, the best one on all the social media, obviously, but the best way is just to go to my website. It's very simple. It's lindabins.com. You can find out all about me there. There are links to my social medias and everything. And, reach out and let's have a conversation. I always love learning about people and getting to know people. So, just go to my website. That's the easiest.
Excellent, listeners. If you're driving, don't have a pen handy, don't worry. All of Linda's information will be in the show notes, easy to access. If you do have a pen handy, spelling on Linda's name is Linda Bins, Binns. And you will find so much information and support on her website, lindabins.com. And again, Linda, thank you so much for joining with us today. It's been such a delight to share time with you, to learn from you, and to explore this really important topic. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And to our listeners, as always, from my heart to yours, thank you for joining us today. It's always a joy and a privilege to share life's journey with you. And this is Imperfect Love.
Thanks so much for sharing your time with me today. Remember, you have the power to transform your life and love fearlessly, if imperfectly, and it's my privilege to help you along the way. You can find more life-changing content, including my books and other podcast episodes, at drcarlamanley.com. Feel free to submit your own confidential questions through my website. I'll do my very best to include your issue on a future episode. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and leave a review. Until we connect again, this is Dr. Carla Marie Manley wishing you oceans of blessings and love. Please note, this podcast is psychoeducational in nature and is not intended to replace formal mental health support. Please contact your healthcare provider or emergency hotline if you need psychiatric care. And, as always, please take good care of your amazing, wonderful self.